Hi guys, it's Sophie and welcome to Sophie Knits. This is a channel where we talk about all things knitting and a little bit of sewing mixed in as well. It's lovely to have you. Welcome back if you've been here before, or welcome to the channel if you've not. We're going to be doing my second ever knitting podcast episode today, and I wanted to follow the standard knitting podcast format, show you some finished objects, some works in progress, some acquisitions, and I'm not actually going to talk through any plans because I am planning on making a separate kind of spring, like end of winter, early spring ideas video, and what I'm excited to what's kind of, I guess, sparking that creativity at the moment. But yeah, we'll start with my finished objects. The first one I have is this one. This is cardigan number 9, one of my favourite things knitwear. I knitted this one in West Yorkshire Spinners Belmont, held together with Knitting for Olive in the colour, it's Merlot. And it's just absolutely like buttery soft. I used these wooden toggle buttons. I bought a few actually and ended up with these sort of slightly darker toned buttons. Hopefully you'll be able to see that one there. And I really like how this one's come out. It's a bit drapier, I think, than it's intended to be, but I really like it. I think just about my button band is still strong enough that it's sitting well when I'm wearing it. But yeah, that's the only thing I would say is I think perhaps it doesn't have quite enough structure, but it is so soft and it just is one of those colours I'm really drawn to. So very happy to have this one in my wardrobe. It properly feels like something I will keep forever. So yeah, really enjoy this one. And then the next garment that I have is the Step by Step sweater, and this is by Florence Miller. I knitted this one in Noro Ito in the colour Ayes, and I adore this. I think this is probably my favourite thing I've ever made. I think it is absolutely gorgeous. I love how the colours work together. I really enjoyed the process of working with the yarn, and I think it can be a bit Marmitey. So if you haven't worked with Noro Ito before, one, the vegetable matter is very high. Like, you are picking out bits of straw every couple of minutes probably with this particular yarn. I really like that. I liked that it reminded me to be mindful and connected me to the fact that, I guess, like, before all this was something that I had in my life, it's keeping me warm, it's kept another animal warm, and I really valued that. I think that really helped me be mindful of the knitting process. The other thing that I did also really enjoy, but I can understand why people wouldn't, is the thickness is incredibly inconsistent with this yarn. It goes from being almost like bulky weight all the way down to like probably like a DK weight, rather than it all being consistently weighted. I loved that. I loved having the thickness and the thinness being unexpected along with the colour changes, and how that kind of makes the finished garment look cohesive, but is kind of cohesively imperfect. I really like that. But if you're the kind of person who wants that like real consistency of your texture and your stitches, you're never going to get that because you can't get it from the yarn. I would 100% work this again. The pattern I quite enjoyed, so I think it was a really easy one to knit. The only thing I would say is I think just here, the arm side, is just a bit, it's not quite tight enough, I guess, is how I'd kind of describe it. So there's this whole section here of the raglan decreases, and where the shoulder piece comes, on me personally, it means when I lift my arms, quite a lot of the body of the sweater is lifting too. So I think if I were to make it again, I'd probably try and do some modifications just to narrow this bit of fabric here to let the fit be better, because if it was tighter up to my arm, I'd have more freedom of movement. So that's the only thing I would say about that personally. It might potentially be because I've got slightly bigger bust circumference, so if you are less endowed in that particular area, you may have no issue at all. But I think for me, this did have that like riding up sense to it, and I thought about whether I wanted to unpick and re-knit, you know, just another couple of inches on to stop that from being an issue for me, but I decided not to in the end. So for a couple of reasons. One was the neck. I tried really hard to colour match the neck, the sleeves and the bottom with the same sort of gradient of colours. So obviously it's not perfect, but I think that's pretty good. So you've kind of got that light blue purple being the finishing bit, just because that's what I kind of got, what I kind of saw, I guess, from the top. I know there's a little bit of black here in the collar, but so that was what I was kind of aiming for. And I've also managed to carry that through all the way down to the bottom of the body, which hopefully you can see just down here. So what would have happened if I'd have unravelled it would have been losing that, and I felt quite proud that I kind of managed to do that throughout, because as I say, the garment itself is perfectly imperfect, but there's something really satisfying about still having like references to some kind of planning in it. So I decided not to. I've kept it the same length. And I absolutely adore this one. This one I'm calling my birthday sweater. This one I'm calling my birthday sweater because I've decided I want to knit myself a sweater for each birthday that I have. So this is technically 32, so I turned 33 this year, but I knitted it as I was 32 for my 33-year-old self. So yeah, so this is the first of my birthday sweaters. I thought that was a really nice idea. And like maybe I might do Christmas sweaters too, but I thought that kind of gift to yourself felt like a really nice thing. And I could imagine myself in my 50s looking back through all of those different birthday gifts. I just thought it was a sweet thing. So yes, that is my birthday sweater. And then I also knitted 2 accessories. So the first of those are my Chantel mitts. And these I will pop on for you. So these are a slip stitch pattern, all over slip stitch mitten. I really like how the thumb connections are done and like the decreasing around the thumbs. I think they're really pretty. I've done them to come up fairly long. And this is in Cardiff Cashmere Classic in the colour Hermes. So this is like a very orangey carroty red. I probably would have preferred a slightly redder red, like a darker cool toned red. But they didn't really have any in stock, and I really do like these. I think they're like a gorgeous pop of colour. The only thing I really think is just that I end up knitting them a bit late in the season, so I haven't really been able to wear them very much, as it's just getting to that point where you don't really need gloves outside. I'm sure we'll have another cold snap, it is the UK, but at the minute you don't need those gloves. But yes, I absolutely love it. I think they were such a good project, and they were inspired by how much I enjoy the slip stitch part of heels when I do my like reinforced heel on my socks. So it felt nice to be able to kind of find a pattern that referenced that. And I think I'll get loads of use out of these next year. I just think they were just a little bit too tight up to this year. And then the last thing that I have to show you, they're a little bent out of shape, is my Plum Pudding and Brandy Cream socks. So these are the Hibernal socks. I've knitted these twice. I knitted them originally as my Plum Pudding socks, just in this purple, which is Bluth by John Arbon Textiles and their 4-ply sock. And I used a tiny bit of Loom's Simple Sock, just in the plain colour cream, just to finish them off, because I used every gram of this purple to try and get these. That's why they're like so short, like the leg is so short, but it does mean I still have these socks in sort of my knitted collection. They are, as I say, a little bit scruffy just because they've been worn, but you can see the cabling detail down here and then the thick ribbed sections. I just think that is so pretty, and it's just plain stockinette through the back and heel, but it follows up round on the cuff. So I just did, well, probably, what's that, 2 inches, something like that, along the back leg, and then got as far as I could. So I did manage to get to the toes, thank God. I was literally using I kept all of my ends. I was literally spit splicing my ends to get to both toes, but I did manage it. So these were a replacement pair for my original pair of Hibernal socks, which unfortunately my husband washed and shrunk. So yes, they are quite precious to me. But they are also just like, I really love wearing them, thus they are what they have been used. But yeah, so those were the 4 things that I finished knitting in February, which I really don't think is too bad, considering that one was a whole knitted garment completely from scratch, whilst it was a fairly heavyweight wool, and the other was finishing a cardigan. So I feel like that's pretty good. It's only 28 days in February. So shall I show you what I'm working on? You probably, if you've seen my last vlog where I talked about spending some time in like a personal knitting retreat with with my husband and our son. yeah, that was a really lovely experience. So you'd have seen these two, but for those who haven't, I'm making good progress on my sweater number 29 by My Favourite Things Knitwear. And I think this might be the most luxurious thing I've ever made. So it's all over cabled, it's the same sort of cabling motif all the way around, followed on the shoulders as well. I'm actually using a hand-dyed yarn to knit this one with. So this is Evermore, that's by Loom Wool. I'm holding it with Rowan's Soft Silk Mohair, which is just like unbelievably soft. Like I can't really describe to you like how good these two things feel together. Every time I touch it, I'm like, oh my goodness. And I know it will pill and I don't care. It's one of those where it's just like, this is gonna be such a beautiful object, and probably, as long as I finish it well, probably like one of the nicest objects I'll have ever owned. It's absolutely gorgeous. It does look really small at the moment, but with blocking, I'm sure that the cables were going to relax out and get a little bit more give on this sort of horizontal lateral space. So I've just knitted now to underneath the arms. What I'll do is I'll finish up these balls that I'm working my way through, and then I like to pick up the neck next so that I get the fit properly down, so that when I put it on for length, it's not being pulled off by the neck not being done or being done, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what I'll do, is I'll use up one of the two, whichever one uses up first, and then I'll do the neck quickly, and then I'll carry on with the body. It's a pretty enjoyable knit as well. I think whilst it looks like it's like complicated cably, it's not complicated cably at all, because it's 1 in 10 round cable repeats. So really it's stockinette for a fair, well, not quite stockinette with a few, it's like ribbing, it's like long stockinette with some ribs. It's knit 6 I think, something like that. But yeah, so it's quite a lot of just repetitive knitting where you're not really having to think about anything at all. It's only that 10th row where you've got to do anything cably. So it's actually been quite a good television one. And I think I will adore this when it's finished. I wish I'd thought to knit myself this jumper a long time ago, because I think probably for the last 5 years I've been trying to find the perfect creamy white jumper every winter. And I just clearly needed to make my own. And I think this is going to be it. I think this is going to be the perfect jumper. And then the second work in progress that I have is this. I find it so funny when whips are like so newly started, and I'm like, hello, this is my thing. It's actually the second of a pair of socks that I'm making for my husband. He wanted a pair of socks, and I really wanted to use John Arvin Textiles 4-ply sock yarn for it, for a number of reasons. Partly because I loved it and have worked with it for 2 pairs of socks of my own now, but partly also because he and I met on Exmoor. It's a place that is wholly connected to him, so the fact that these are Exmoor sock yarns, and they are made like on the moor and they're processed in Devon, and then I think the farthest they go is Cardiff. It's very local to where Tom and I met. So it just feels like a proper treat to be able to knit them. They're a fairly sort of simple broken rib texture, and then it goes into stockinette once you get down past your heel. And this colour I think is Hemel. I'll link it below for you, but that's what the yarn looks like. And yes, this is my car knitting, bed knitting project at the minute, and it's just sometimes nice to have something small. So those are my 2 current whips. And then moving on to acquisitions, 2 things to share with you that are yarn related, and both are knitting for Olive. I actually capitulated to their sale and was really excited about their sale. It was something like buy 5 get 1 ball free, and for me it worked out pretty affordably. So because there was one pattern I knew 100% I was going to knit, and it was going to use quite a lot of their yarn, so that made it really easy to just say yes, actually that's going to make it work. So I kind of needed to add it up to enough to benefit. Does that make sense? Like I knew to get as many free as I could, I needed to buy a few more. So the thing that I got a few more of is this one. It's the Knitting for Olive 100% silk, and this is just in the colour cream, which is flowed cream, and it's just pure silk. And this one I'm going to probably make a cloud tee with, because I really wanted to have a silk shirt, like tee style shirt, which maybe I might wear for work because I've got some very like structured trousers and skirts that I could pair it with, but that equally I could use for other times of the year. So I think this will be a really lovely piece, and as I say, it just helped me get a few more balls of wool to like make, like almost save some money to spend some money, girl math stuff. Yeah, and then the other one, which is the one that I knew I was going to knit from anyway, was I just got the Knitting for Olive merino, and I think this is in the colour navy. Is it just called navy? Navy blue. And I'm going to hold this one double to knit the Cinema Sweater by Veronica Lindenberg or Kudvikika. And I've wanted to knit that since the moment I saw it. I think that is going to be such a heavy rotation piece for me when it's done. So I'm really excited to have like a sweaters quantity for that. I think I'll have such good fun knitting that one up because I can just see myself living in it when it's completed. And then I mentioned in the intro that there's going to be like a tiny amount of sewing content that I think I'm going to share here too. I am not a sewist. I have very recently, within the last month, bought myself my first sewing machine. So I have sewn before, so I did have sewn on a sewing machine at school. I did textiles from, I don't know, like 11 till 16, something like that. And I have sewn very simple things at home by hand. So things like I've hemmed curtains, I've made my own curtains, but I've never done anything more complicated than that really. And I've been just watching a lot of creative people basically making their own clothes, and have like radicalised myself a little bit into like understanding more about the textile industry and where our clothes come from. And I'm like, I need to be able to learn how to make my own clothes and repair my own clothes well. So I decided to invest in a sewing machine. So what you're going to see is here is not the same as the knitwear, where I think the pieces are like fairly polished, like they're very wearable. What you're going to see here is me trying desperately to learn how to sew. So to that end, I have got some acquisitions that are sewing related. The very first thing I'm going to show you, please don't laugh at it, but this is the first thing that I've sewed. This is a little test tote bag that I made from some Fat Quarters, which is just lined. But yeah, so there was one iteration before this one actually, but it doesn't exist anymore. I tried it and it was so poor that I've cut it up to get it back into scrap again. But this is the second one that I made. So it's technically my first object that stayed as an object. And I have actually made 4 of these. So I made 4 partly just to practice, to really get used to the machine, to get used to doing straight stitches, to kind of feel like I'm running the machine rather than the machine's running me, and that I don't know what's happening to it. It's also meant that I've just been able to get a hand on like the very, very basic things, like why isn't it sewing? Oh, okay, it's because the bobbin underneath is empty. So how do I replace that? Yes, I know how to do that. Or why is it doing this funny thing? That's because my presser foot isn't down. So these have literally just been for those really basic parts. And I think it's been really helpful. They've also been helpful in helping me measure and cut fabric multiple times, and think about how to do that and what tools suit me best to do that, so that I can at least, when I first start making my first proper stuff, have some clue as to what's happening with my materials. And I think that tends to be a way that I quite like to learn. I quite like getting to know some of those basic things before I kind of jump too far, though I am quite an adventurous beginner generally, I would say. But anyway, all of that to say, this is my first little rubbish tote bag, but it exists. And I've got some fabric here to do my next kind of few projects with. So I'm going to make myself a tote bag from this fabric. It is just probably a bit too lightweight actually, but a kind of lightweight canvas with these birds on it, and I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And then I got a matching cotton, which just matches, if you can see the inner piece there, they're exactly the same shade. So these two, I think probably is a little bit too lightweight, but it's fine, it will function. These two will be a tote bag in like a normal size. So as I say, I was like practicing with these. I've just got some fat quarters to use. So this will be the first one that's like scaled up into tote bag size. I am also going to pop a pocket on this one. I've popped pockets on some of the other practice runs and have enjoyed that. I also haven't got it to show you because it isn't finished. I've also tried like quilting some stuff on some of the practice ones, just to get used to stuff. But yes, so this will be my first proper finished object tote bag, rather than literally just mecking around with fat quarters. And then today actually, this one arrived from Ray Stitch, and this one is one I would have sewn by hand, if that makes sense. So this is like, it's not really a project more than it is just a thing, but this is just some linen in a dark sort of indigo blue. Oh, that's Tomback. And this one I'm just going to make into a tablecloth. And all I'm planning on doing with this one is just like double folding over the raw edge. So I'm not going to do anything exciting at all. Yeah, that's like how I hem stuff. I don't know if there's better ways to do it, but that's how I have always done it, is like tuck it over by like a 1/4 inch or something, and then maybe like a 1/2 inch or an inch on the edge. I'll double check before I do it, but that's what I was planning on doing. And this is just because when we went away, we had some flowers out that were dyed, so they had natural dyes in them. And one of our cats ate one of the flowers and was sick up the flowers, and the dyes dyed our wooden table, and we could sand it down and revarnish it, but it's not cleanable. So we kind of thought probably a tablecloth's the easiest, less time intensive part of it than having to sand down the whole grain of the whole table and then get that like down to like a smooth finish again. So yeah, so that's what I'm planning to do with this linen. I will of course Google before I just start making tablecloths, but there is a bit of me that's like, it's a piece of fabric, I'm sure it'll be fine. Yeah, that one was from Ray Stitch. And then I have one last piece of fabric stuff to show you, and that is for my first like proper thing. So first sewing pattern, I guess is what I would say. All of these other things are Sophie making stuff up, which I think is fine. It's a totally valid way of learning stuff. But I would like to be able to read a sewing pattern and use a sewing pattern and get used to what the language all is. So I have this sort of white, what is it? It's a white cotton canvas in the colour Natural, and this is a blackbird fabric one. And I also got this tomato red print with the little hearts, black and white hearts in it. And that one is Bloom Block printed cotton batiste, and these two are for the Bestie bag. So that's the first pattern that I'm going to try and follow. Wish me luck. And I also got the hardware, so I got this as a kit just because I thought that would be easier for me, that I knew then that all the bits would do what I wanted them to do, and I could make the pattern with as much fabric as I have, because the pattern side of it is completely new to me. I've never used a pattern. I've mostly just gone, I'll sew these things together. So yeah, that'll be good fun. So feel free to follow along as I commence my sewing journey. And yeah, as I say, I am like beginner, so apologies if I've already got things wrong. I'm sure I have, but yeah, it's a new thing that I'm having fun playing with, which is great. So those are all of my knits and sewing things and acquisitions and everything I'm currently working on at the moment, and what I've been up to in the month of February. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in my next one very soon. Bye bye.